Hello, what have we here?
All right, folks, welcome to Explore the Force. We have an ETF Extra this week, and we've got Trials of the Jedi. And I cannot talk about books by myself, so I brought in two of my favorite people to talk the High Republic. Hopefully, we'll get them back here in about a month or so to talk about the High Republic as a whole, which I'm a little nervous about that chat because I think we're going to need like a 4-hour window to like really dive into this. But first and foremost, we've got Marie Bernadette at So Much Life. Marie, how are you?
I'm great. It's summer, so it's nice and chill for me anyway. I've been spending a lot of time sewing. If you're watching, I've got Eve Byer robes in the background that I'm currently working on. So fun stuff.
Marie is the seamstress of the High Republic. And most of the authors and stuff have got stuff from you, have they not?
Yeah, I've made some for a few of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Johnny, how, other than sweating to death over there across the pond, how has your summer been? What have you been up to?
Okay, mainly having great fun looking for jobs, but
Yeah.
but it's meant I've had a quiet time, so yeah,
All
it's
right.
a little different.
Yeah. All right. Well, first and foremost, you guys need Marie, your handle So Much Life correct on Instagram.
Yep.
And then Johnny, you're at Starboard Files.
Yeah,
You got to check these two out. They do lots of cool stuff. Johnny always has like these really in-depth breakdowns of all the books. Marie, you do a lot of sewing, a lot of cosplay stuff on there, which is always a lot of fun to see. You've got Dragon Con coming up in a few months. How excited
Yes.
are you for that?
Oh, I can't wait. Dragon Con is like one of my favorite events of the year.
Yeah,
So I'm getting a Dragon Con and the celebration year. It's great.
nice. Yeah, you're gonna be spoiled. So, but like I said before, we are here to talk about Trials of the Jedi by Charles Soule. It came out July 17th, 2025. He started off this whole Project Luminous. Light of the Jedi, I believe, came out January 5th, 2021. That's correct. I do think it got pushed back after when COVID hit. They kind of pushed it. And then it came out, a few months before London Celebration, I believe, correct?
Yeah,
Or is
yeah,
it?
it did. Yeah, because that was the
So,
year they had it. No, it wasn't London. It was Anaheim that year.
Anaheim, that's right. I knew it was one of them. I couldn't remember um, which one
Yeah.
it was. But yeah, so we've got them. He will bookend what I believe is the 26th books that make up the High Republic. I don't know if that
yep.
includes the balance of what is it?
Edge of Balance.
The Edge of Balance, which I need to read those. Those are the only things I haven't read. So I need to get into those. And then, of course, he's super active in comic books, not just Star Wars, but a lot of things. So he has been involved, not just writing these two books. But I guess my first question for you guys is, how does, like I said, like he bookends this whole thing, we've got authors that have written, I don't know who wrote the most. Off the top of my head, I think maybe Kevin Scott, maybe, I don't know, maybe George, who came in later and he wrote a bunch of stuff. When you're reading this, do you think he did a good job starting and finishing this Project Luminous? I mean, we're gonna, obviously, we're not trying to focus on the whole High Republic today, but we're going to kind of dive into, the Trials of the Jedi. But how do you feel about that bookend style from just the one author, Marie?
I really like it. I enjoy Charles's writing style. And then the one thing that I thought was kind of interesting is that when they were marketing Trials of the Jedi, I heard a lot of people say, "Oh, you could just read Light of the Jedi and Trials of the Jedi and have a complete picture of what's going on in the High Republic." And I was like, "Wow, that sounds really cool." And I disagree with that completely. But that aside, I do think it functions as a pretty good pair of books.
Yeah. All right. I hadn't heard that. That sounds insane to me, given how much the three of us, and Taylor and everybody else that we know we've had on the show before, how much we've read.
Yeah.
I mean, 26 books, the comics, I mean, all this stuff that there's audio books that are only on Audible that we've listened to. I mean, I don't even know if those are thrown into, and then you have like the audio version, like those audio dramas. But anyways, Johnny, what do you think about the bookends? How did
Mhm.
Charles do bookending this massive series?
I thought he did a fantastic job. I mean, like starting it off with Light of the Jedi was such a big job to begin with to get everyone into like an entirely new era and in the timeline. and introducing all these characters and setting everything up. And then, so in a way, it does feel, I think, appropriate that he closes it as well. And obviously, he's part of the original 5 authors that all like sat down in that room with Michael Siglain and the others to like come up with what this story was going to be. So he has been involved throughout and has known everything that's going on, even though these are the only 2 like books that he's written.
He's also done
He's done a
Shadow
few
of the Starlight
comics.
comic.
Yeah, Shadows of the Starlight comic, Eye of the Storm, which is the 2-parter about Markion Row.
Right.
And another one.
He has a couple of,
The Blade as well. The one
Blade.
about
Okay,
Blade. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So he's been kind of involved in some of those little off stories. Do you
but
think,
like you say, to end it, it's a hell of a job as well, because like you say, 26 books. I made a note here. There's 26 books, 6 mangas, 3 audio dramas, and 147 different comic issues.
Whoa,
Ish.
147. Yeah, wow. There's more coming out, because I just checking my comic book thing, and Finale or whatever is coming out. And it's Kiev and everything. So I'm kind of excited to see where that's going. I'm be interested. But yeah, do you think, I got to ask you, if someone who's read it all, like, do you think you could just read Light of the Jedi and Trials of the Jedi and be good?
No. I'd say at minimum you have to read all of the adult novels, but
yeah, I still feel like bare minimum. My wife has read Light of the Jedi. Maybe I'll ask her to read Trials and see what happens, because she hasn't read anything in between. She likes to do a lot of like historical fiction stuff, which is what I do every day. So I'm like, nah, I'm good. Maybe I'll have her read Trials and see how it goes. I mean, that's a pretty big. I mean, you got a little over 4 years separating the beginning and the end of this. So, but yeah, we'll move on from that. I agree with you guys. There were a couple times where I thought maybe he wasn't as connected to some of the characters, but that's probably me as a fan having been connected to certain characters, because he does introduce some of the ones that we love or I love personally, and so maybe that's where he kind of was at. I do feel like we'll get into like some things were built up in the stories, and then I'm not sure like how it ended, but so let's just dive into this book. What did you think? Like right off the bat, like this. You're going to try to recommend this book to somebody. Like, what are you going to tell them?
It was kind of I think, it's an emotional roller coaster, especially having spent all this time with all these characters. And is it possible to answer every question we had and give every character like a satisfying conclusion for everyone, because everyone has their own opinions on those characters and their own ones which they love? So is it possible to do that and absolutely get everything? It's like, no, it's not possible. That's not a possible task to do. So you got to like take that into account. And I think like the overall story of the High Republic, of Project Luminous, is like the Nihil crisis with Markion Row and the Nameless, and that gets wrapped up. Now the other characters and stuff, their stories may need more.
We'll talk about that a little bit later.
But those can be wrapped up later, and we can learn more later. But that's like the story of what this is, and I think it wraps that up really well.
All right, Marie, what about you?
Yeah, I think even with all of the setup of all of the 26 books, 25 books before this, there were plenty of things in the book that surprised me, that were, I think, very interesting, very creative ways of resolving all of the conflicts and storylines. And so I really enjoyed it. It was definitely an emotional roller coaster. lots of things that happened.
Yeah. Yes.
So I think if anyone has enjoyed the High Republic, then they would enjoy this conclusion.
How would you not, right? If you had written any of them. Okay, I should tell everybody now, from this point moving forward, kind of, it's going to be spoilerific. There's no way to really dive into this book and talk about the plot and stuff like that without absolutely destroying, all the secrets and the surprises and the twists and turns and things like that. I think it was the last adult book was Temptation of the Force, yeah? So, and then that book ends with, again, this is going to be spoilers for just about everything, but it ends with like parts of what I assumed were the blights on Coruscant. So you're
Yeah.
sitting there, and we were sitting there for I don't know how long it was, because I think I finished Temptation of the Force last summer
Yep.
on my way down to Rebel ScumCon. So it's been a while. It's been almost a year. Did it feel like it had stakes? Like, so we get into this book. That's one of the things I enjoyed the most about the story, other than like Yoda and Yaddle and a few of the ones that we know will show up on the High Council later on. And, and we talked about it off the air a little bit too, Marie, the people that are in the Wayseeker, we know that they're going to make it through this story, but
Right.
how nervous were you guys for some of your favorite characters? And did you feel like, because for me, I was just like, like there are certain books where people are just getting wiped out in phase 2 and, phase 3 and things like that. People were dying left and right on us. Did you feel that it had real stakes? And do you think that that really helped with Star Wars? Because, we're all Star Wars fans, and some complaints on some of the TV shows and things like that is like, well, we know these people aren't going to die because they got plot armor. So do you think that like the stakes of like, we don't know any of these Jedi for the most part really added to the book? And then, so what do you guys think about that?
I think so, definitely. I mean, I remember even reading Fallen Star. Like, Avar is my girl. I was like terrified for her. And then she was barely in the book, sadly. But as each book has gone on, if we didn't have the cover art revealed, then I didn't know if Avar had made it. And especially with this one being the end, it could have been the end for any of the Jedi. And that in itself was mildly terrifying, but in a good way, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. What about you, Johnny?
I think there was definitely stakes. I think like in especially in phase 1, we got used to, oh, we love this character. Oh, they're dead. Quite a lot in phase 1, and then in phase 2, because obviously that was shorter and it was set further back in time. And then in phase 3, it really seemed like they kind of pulled back from that. And when you thought people were going to die, they didn't. But there's, I don't want to sound like something like I wanted more death. No, but I wouldn't have minded 1 or 2 more deaths just to give it a little bit more impact. We had people getting injured and kind of taking out the action that way a bit more. But I think there was still a lot of tension just because you didn't really know where it was going, and then there's also like the fact that you've got the blight, which is kind of where they're trying to go with like the overall kind of like this is the tension, because somehow we know that the entire galaxy doesn't get destroyed, because we've seen stories later on about how do they stop that? How does it work? So I think there was still definitely stakes. Like I say, I think there was a couple of moments where people maybe were injured, or that maybe it would have been more impactful if they died. But overall, it's still, I was turning from a certain point, like from about a third of the way through the book, suddenly it starts picking up, kind of thing, and from that point, I could barely put it down, kind of thing. So I think that shows that there's definitely like stakes, and that it keeps the tension going.
Marie,
I think having the Luminous 9, but then also having like the additional Luminous 9 was like, oh shoot, like literally any of these characters could be taken out and just replaced. And so
and you're like, oh, they've got a backup 9. Does that mean the entirety of the first 9 are pretty much
that's what
I thought.
I mean, I'm trying to think of the only one that's the thing too, having I don't want to ruin Wayseeker for anybody, but there's a character that's like in it.
I haven't read that
yet.
So
there's one person I was like, well, this person's going to survive because they're in this book that happens later, and you guys don't know who it is yet. It's an awesome surprise, like one of my favorite characters, and I'm glad to see that person get some more, not screen time, but you know what I mean, some story time. But do you think that's a really good point, though, Johnny? Like you brought up. I can remember reading phase 2 in Lydia's book, Cataclysm, and I mean, I'm sweating because I'm like, who is she going to kill next? Like, everyone's died. And, even in phase 3 with like Master what's Amadeo's master? Vox, is it?
I can't
Oh my
remember his
gosh,
name.
Miro
now.
Vox, right?
Miralax.
Yeah.
Yeah, Miralax. So like that death still sticks with me. Like that's right up there with like Jecki and Acolyte. But do you think, Marie, what Johnny said, like would it have been more impactful if like some more of the Luminous Nine had been taken out? Because technically, we just lose the one,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
we'll get to the end of the book and what that all means and stuff like that. But I mean, we only really lose one on this super crazy, dangerous mission.
Yeah. I mean, I was like, I'm glad that people survived, but yeah, it would have been, I think, more of an emotional punch if other Jedi had died, or at least characters that we were familiar with,
Yeah,
and
kind of
so
attached. Yeah. All right. Yeah. I kind of. I mean, I will say that like that's one of the reasons I asked that question first is I just kept waiting. Like, when's it going to happen? When's it going to happen? When's it going to happen? And then it happens a little bit towards the end. But how did you guys feel about the pacing of this book, Johnny? You said just a minute ago, like you know, I felt personally like it was smooth. I like the way Charles writes. I like how he interjects these little different stories with his interludes he has, and you're trying to figure out what that's about. But then it just takes off for me. I was like, I was at camp with my family and I just said, you guys need to give me like 2 or 3 hours. I'm going to knock this out because I can't think about anything else. You got to let me finish it. And they did. And I finished it and I had to listen, I had to read it. So how did you guys feel about the pacing of this story?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the pacing. Like I said, I thought it gradually got you into it and got everything moving. And at a certain point, yeah, it just kind of keeps going, and you have to keep reading. I wasn't sure maybe what the point to begin with of like the was it the Coleman family who are on the
yeah, the
planet
interlude
affected by the
chapters.
blight. Obviously, it shows when the blight gets solved. It kind of shows that, but I think it also gives you a good little breather whenever their interludes come along. Otherwise, the tension and everything and the pacing might get too much. So it
Yeah,
just kind of
I
takes you
enjoyed
away
those
from the
chapters
action of those characters that you
in
need more to
retrospect.
tell more about.
Yeah, for real.
They were frustrating to me when I was reading them because I was like, I don't care. I want to know what's going on with our people that we love. But they made sense in like a let's show what's happening in the rest of the galaxy rather than just like tell it in like a little blurb.
Yeah, because I feel like even Markion says he's not going to get to see the death of everybody. And so like, at that point Bell's going to be him, but like we get to see like what's happening just at least on one planet, knowing it's probably happening on multiple planets, if not dozens and dozens with what happens with the nameless at the beginning of the book. So, yeah, I kind of felt the same way, Marie. Like when I was like reading and listening to this as we were driving back to Pennsylvania and, every time that interlude came, I was like, come on, like, they always end in a certain, like almost like a little cliffhanger spot. And then what's next? So, but yeah, I enjoyed that a lot. So, how did you, Mariah? I can't remember if you answered that question or not. The pacing. How did you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, in general, I like the pacing. I love the way that the High Republic is written, where every chapter is like a different point of view. It's always frustrating to me because I'll finish one person's point of view and I'm like, I don't want to know someone else. I want to know that one. But then when I finish it, I appreciate it. So
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Excellent. I love the way, yeah, because a lot of the High Republic books, they kind of went to that where it would like, you get the story of these multiple stories going on, and it's like they build up and it just drops, and then you get like a chapter or two, and it could be like, different things happening in different places. So, but that's the strength, I think, of the High Republic too. There's so much going on, and then all these great stories happening. So, of course, we have this. This thread, if you haven't, I mean, I can't imagine you'd be listening to this podcast if you hadn't, or watching this YouTube if you haven't read it. So, like Johnny, you talked about, it's, the Nihil threat and the Blight. We handle the Drengir. The Drengir kind of get finalized in a book previous, which I thought was pretty cool. I really loved how it happened. They seem more like a distraction to me throughout the High Republic than anything else. But, you had this, you needed to have a bad guy in stakes like we talked about. And then, of course, all these books leading up to it. Do you think they answered those questions, and I guess we could talk about the armor kind of now, and how you have these creatures that are terrifying, and I'm going to ask you guys some questions about it later on. But the Nameless, man, like these are some of the scariest things. Like, what's in my imagination, what they look like with what little artwork we've got. Then you have maybe one of the most evil bad guys that we've seen in the Star Wars, because even the Emperor didn't want to destroy the galaxy. By the end of this book, he just wants to kill everything. I mean, that is nuts to me. Like, I was just like, this guy is a maniac. You think about where he comes from at the beginning of the High Republic. He's kind of like a punk tween kid who, like, there's no way this is the bad guy of this series. Something's going to happen. One of these Tempest runners or whatever are going to take over. But do you think the armor and Planet X and the Nameless, like, how do you guys feel about all that kind of coming together? I know that's kind of a big thing, but how do you guys feel about? I love the armor. The way it looks is so cool. Kind of gives you a little bit of like Clone Wars armor on the Jedi. How did you guys feel about those storylines? And do you think that it was enough to like handle this massive, the Blight, I guess, and Markion?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I like the conclusion as far as like Markion and his just being insane, because I felt like for a lot of Phase 3 that I was just so confused by what Markion was doing. It didn't make sense, and I kind of thought that like maybe the authors just like didn't communicate very well about his goals, because he just felt random, and
yeah,
the answer was it is random, and then it kind of all clicked.
Yeah, for sure.
I thought that was a satisfying conclusion for him, as far as like finally understanding his motives and mentality, and that he wasn't after power, really. He was after just existing.
Or the reverse of it, I guess, right?
Yeah. Being the last man standing.
Yeah. He kind of, I think, to be at the beginning in like Phase 1 and everything, and then he wants to, I don't know, take down the Jedi. He hates the Jedi, hates the Republic, wants to kind of take them down or show them to be fallible. He does that, and then at the beginning of Phase 3, he kind of loses his way. He's kind of like bored.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then he discovers the Blight. And then so it kind of, and I think it makes sense because it showed all he ever wanted was to show that he was more important than anyone else. The decisions he made were more important than anyone else, and he was like just wanted dominance, and wanted to, and that letting the Blight and encouraging the Blight to destroy the entire galaxy would be something no one else could ever do. He would be the only one that could ever do it. So therefore, if he then died as part of that, it's fine because he's proven to himself and everyone else that he can do it.
Yeah.
So like you say, it's not about ruling other people. He doesn't care.
Yeah,
never did really.
Once he says that, he's like, I want to destroy the entire galaxy. At that point, the stakes are like, well, we know he doesn't succeed, so meh. But it was still a good like view into his psyche.
You do a lot of damage though, right? Because there's lots of planets they can create that they can just wipe out. We knew, like, when they did Kashyyyk in the last book, I was like, well, this isn't going to work because I know full well that Kashyyyk's fine, and then Coruscant, we know, like, maybe they're down there and there's always around the mill, around the clock. But I was like, well, then the Emperor takes over, and what the hell happens? But every other planet, for the most part, would have been up to stake. Marie, as a psychologist and teacher and stuff like that, do you think you could use Markion as like some kind of an example in one of your classes or something of just like, I mean, where does he fall for you? Like, just, I mean, his mentality and.
I don't even know if I could like adequately analyze. I can certainly understand that like what we know of his family life is all kinds of messed up. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. He definitely doesn't think in a way that is normal or typical.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, I mean, I think it tracks for his history.
Yeah, and the Evereni in general, I think.
Yeah.
So and I got some questions about them too, I think, here at the end. But so
Yeah,
I
I
feel
like
like
the armor as well. It was the armor was I thought was a good solve without being like a magic MacGuffin that solved everything kind of thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
Obviously they find that, or I think it's in Tears of the Nameless.
yes,
So obviously they make the armor out of it, and it does enable them to be able to like tolerate the Nameless. That's
hmm
like they can still feel the effect, but they can function,
yeah,
whereas they couldn't before, and they can actually like see them. But and obviously, so they get the armor, and they're getting ready to leave, and then I think it was really smart of Charles Soule to have Arkoff, Master Arkoff, the Wookiee Jedi, get
Yeah.
hurt to show that there's still danger. This isn't a
yeah.
solve that solves everything. And then he's one of the ones I thought maybe he should have died there, and that would have
I thought that too.
been a
Yeah.
bigger impact. Um,
Arkov's only from the he's from the manga,
yeah,
correct?
Edge of
And
Balance.
then
Yeah.
he's also in Light what is it? Uh,
pops up in
Pod-
something else.
yeah, he's just in the
Yeah.
last book. Why can't I think of the
Oh,
name? Into the Light.
it's the
Into
light.
the
Yeah,
Light.
yeah,
Isn't he in
Yeah.
that? He's in
He
that
is
with
there.
like Kalnaka and stuff as well. Like that's the
yeah.
first time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would have been an easy way to kind of like wipe somebody else out and build the stakes even more before they even get to um,
Yeah.
Planet X. But
Yeah.
did you like
And
the
then
fact
also
that
you
they
got the
used
fact
it
that
too?
they lose pieces of armor, and then they
Mhm.
can feel it more. And then
Yeah.
Yeah.
also the fact that Planet X, because of what they discover there, it's all there's so much life and everything, but it's out of
Mhm.
balance. So
Yeah.
they
Chaos.
still feel that even though they've got the armor on. It's like
Yeah.
overwhelming, especially if they take a piece off, especially if they
Yeah.
take the faceplate or helmet off. Then they
Yeah, because
get
they're having
overwhelmed
like
just by the
delusions.
sheer
And
strength of just the force and like
yeah.
life there kind of thing.
Do you think it was a good idea to get rid of the non Jedi the way they did, like with the Blight and with the Nameless? Like, I mean, they would have just kind of gotten in the way, or is that more people? Is that more red shirts for us? Like people that could die. I don't know. Did you guys
I
like
think it
that?
made sense. I mean, it made sense
Yeah,
narratively, and I think it was a good call to not have as many people to write about,
yeah,
Mhm.
could have
and then
gotten.
also people to save at the end. And it would have been a distraction for the Jedi to like be saving Nameless and be saving the civilians, and you know.
All right,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah, I love the armor. I think it was a really cool narrative piece, especially because they set it up really well.
Oh
And
yeah.
I'm excited to have my own set.
Oh, you're making some. Oh, that's gonna be amazing.
I'm gonna have
That
Avar's armor.
that is going to be amazing. I can't wait to see that. We get like a little sneak peek or anything. I mean, no,
Yeah,
not yet.
I have the 3D print files, and
Yeah, the
friend's
3D
gonna.
print files. Okay, perfect. I can't wait to see that. Um, all right, so we get our heroes and they take off, and Markion he's a good bad guy. I mean, just in general, he physically, intelligence wise, I mean, he figures out what they're up to. He takes off, and he kind of they all get to Planet X roughly about the same time. Um, how do we feel about Planet X? It's I knew it was important in phase. Cause, I mean, even in phase one, they start to give us these little hints, and then of
Yeah,
course phase
Mm.
two, it's massive. I mean, there's a book about it, and then you got Sunshine Dobbs or whatever his name is, and things like that. Um, and then of course you have this planet that's, I mean, it's a force planet, right? I mean, it's kind of, I don't know how else to explain it.
yeah,
And they talk about it being a vergence in the force. So you're kind of bringing, and this is what I kind of like too, was like, we had this thing that for the first time, I really kind of heard it in the Acolyte, like this vergence in the force, and then they're kind of bringing it into the books and they're making these things. I've loved how they've introduced like the High Republic and stuff, and they started pushing it out into other things and making it more, um, mainstream, like it's always been there for us. Did you guys like Planet X and the Nameless? Like these creatures, because when we see it the first time in phase two, it's like this beautiful
yeah.
planet that people are feeling the force that don't want to be feeling the force necessarily. And it doesn't seem like it's as dangerous, but when they get there, I mean, it's like, oh, hell's breaking loose because it's the force is at odds with itself. It's not balanced. Um, how do you guys feel about that whole storyline? And we can kind of start getting into how things play out throughout the book as well. So like you don't have to worry about like spoiling something, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. I think when they first got there in Trials, I was kind of confused at how they were describing it because I remember it being very beautiful and peaceful, but then figuring out that like it was just out of balance made sense. And so I thought that was really cool. I like all of the breadcrumbs for Planet X, even when we didn't know that like Marchand had been to Planet X in phase 1, like that's what it was.
Yeah.
And so it's pretty cool.
Cool.
Yeah, Planet X is pretty crazy. I think they name it later on, right? It's called Sophos.
Yeah, at the end.
Anyway, yeah, which means balance. They said.
Yeah, it means balance.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a pretty crazy place, and like you said, Jimmy, how it does bring in these things that we've had in various other Star Wars stories, like the Virgins in the Acolyte, like the World Between Worlds. Yeah, I think it helps explain that there's places in the galaxy where the Force is particularly strong, where there's, I don't know, it's like a gateway to a Force dimension. I don't know, but I think the way that, and I think we'll come to it with how it all plays out, but the way that Charles Soule writes about it, it could be very esoteric and difficult for people to wrap their heads around, but the way he explains it makes it really understandable and makes it more understandable and easier to get a grip of, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Sure. And there's other things throughout the book that link to these other little like Force things, like I think there's who is it? Emmerich Caphtor, like he force heals Cantum, and he describes it in the same way as like Rey does in The Rise of Skywalker, where it's like transferring a bit of your life force to somebody else to help heal them. And there was another one as well. I can't remember what it was. But yeah, there was various little links, I thought, to things like that.
I think one of the big strengths of the High Republic initiative is the fact that there are so many authors, and so many of these authors are participating in other aspects of Star Wars. And so they've been able to like sprinkle those little pieces. I mean, like Kevin and Charles have been putting High Republic stuff in comics since before the first book came out. So I mean, we got Avar in her armor in the Kylo Ren comic, like prior to Light of the Jedi. Which I think is very cool.
Yes. Gives me hope for the future of Star Wars, how well they planned this out.
Yeah.
I wish Michael Sinclair, I love his books, but I wish he'd kind of maybe be the one who takes over Lucasfilm. Because the guy can organize, man. The guy can keep people in line and organized. And so I was excited for the Virgins and stuff like that. And you're right, Johnny. It could have been, because I've used Phase 2 to defend the Acolyte at length with all the different Force religions and things like that.
Yeah.
And, to defend parts of it, like everyone's mad about the witches or whatever. Like, oh, that's not how the Jedi. I'm like, well, not just Jedi use the Force, and the whole story. But so of course that happens. Avar and the whole crew gets split up. We got Aslan Rel. He takes off, and you got him, and he's being chased down by Ty and Wreath, and then of course you've got Burry and Bell and Ember. And then, then Aslan, not Aslan, sorry, Avar and Elzar doing their thing. And then, of course, R.I.P. Torben Buck. I mean, it does make sense for someone who's named Buckets of Blood to kind of go out.
I want to have a word with Charles Soule about that.
Yeah.
I've got the quote written down here from when he dies, right? The nameless bore Torben down to the shuttle and began to feed. Burryarga's lightsaber fell to the ground. Blood, buckets of it, spilled across the hull. Really, Charles? You're a monster. Using his own
good
name
punchy lines like that.
Yeah, that was a tough. I mean, I didn't feel super connected to Torben. I wasn't one that I don't feel was in the books a ton. But still,
he was mainly in the High Republic Adventures comics.
Comics.
And see, I missed. Until Phase 3, I missed it in Phase 1, I think. So I didn't have that connection. I went back real quick and I reread them. I found the omnibus and got through that. But my connection to Buckets wasn't as, as strong as it should have been. But it still was impactful, I thought, because I didn't see it coming.
Yeah.
And it's just like bam, and I was like, oh my gosh. But so you have all these stories happening, right? We'll let's kind of focus on Elzar and Avar and their journey through what feels like it's like the center of the planet, right? They're going through maybe another plane of existence that's even in this planet that seems to be a plane of existence, and they run into the nameless, but not nameless. They have the name. I can't remember. Is it the Sri Raka? Is that what balance
Shikarai or
means?
Shikarai, yeah.
Yeah. So, how do you guys feel about? And we don't have to talk necessarily about how it ends for them quite yet, but how do you guys feel about their little like journey? Like Johnny, you said you thought it was explained pretty well, like them going through like the
Yeah.
dark and then coming through the light and then kind of getting to the
Yeah.
center.
Yeah,
I
they-
envisioned them like in the center of the planet for some reason. I don't know why.
I think it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. It's it was an interesting journey. Obviously, they travel through the dark part, like caverns, and they say there's always like these creatures just out of just in the darkness that they can't quite see, and they kind of have to fend them off, and then they get to the light, which is kind of the natural habitat of the Shriekerai, the Nameless, and to see them there is completely different than outside. Like they're like these kind of ethereal beings, kind of thing, that exist in the light, and they're there to kind of keep the light and the dark in balance on this planet, and that is what, because it's out of balance because Nameless have been taken away and they've been dying. That's why the blight is spreading. It's the darkness from this planet kind of spreading. So yeah, I thought it was explained well. It was really interesting. I just thought it was really done really well, and just kind of turned what you thought might happen with the Nameless completely on its head. Like, and even at the beginning of the book, the Jedi think, right, if we return the Nameless to their planet, we're hoping that the blight will recede or stop spreading.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what happens, but it's not. It doesn't happen in the way the Jedi think or the way that we think it's going to happen. But to just completely turn that on its head, and like with Torben Buck, for one of the Jedi to end up dying protecting the Nameless, the things that have been attacking them, is just just turns everything that's been in the previous two kind of phases and everything on its head right in the last book, which I really enjoyed.
That scene of them trying to stop them from killing themselves, like it was nuts, right? Because you're like, it's got to be so hard for the Jedi to. I mean, not hard for the Jedi because they love life, but these monsters have. I mean, it's the one time I feel like I've seen Jedi scared or whatever. You know what I mean? Like consistently. So, Marie, what about you? How did you feel about like their journey and?
I thought it was described very well. The scene where Elzar starts hallucinating Stellan punched me in the stomach. It's really good. But I think that it was a very satisfying and logical conclusion, I guess, to Avar and Elzar's story. It really felt like that this is what they've been building towards from the beginning, even though it's not what I would have expected.
All right. Yeah.
I'm sure there'll be a lot of people that are mad that they didn't get to run off into the sunset together.
Well, they kind of got
it makes complete sense for the story.
Yep.
And they are together, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's just in a very different way to what you would
wondered that from Temptation of the Force. I was a little bit nervous about their relationship. Like, how is this going to fit in the canon? And I thought it was handled pretty well. It kind of reminds me of the end of the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie, right? Where he can only come back like, what's his name? Can only come back. Will can only come back every, 10 years or something like that. But we'll get into that in a minute. But so we had that happening. And then, of course, there's a battle between, it was kind of cool to me. I didn't see it coming at first. You had Elzar, some of these names, Aslan, you had Wreath, and you had Ty, all kind of together. And, they're kind of determined to take Aslan out. Wreath's obviously very conflicted about this. And they have which rod did they have? The Rod of Power or Rod of Knowledge or
Ages.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then, of
Mark
course,
John has the Rod of Power. They have the Rod of Ages, I think.
And that kind of gets explained in some of the comics, how they find that. And I thought that was pretty cool. But then how the three of them kind of have to, you had all three parts of the Force, really.
Yeah.
How do you guys feel about that little side shoot and Aslan and we can kind of talk about where he ends up and what do you think that might mean.
Yeah.
So, because I'm kind of confused by some of the things in this ending of this book. Like I don't want to be too long in this, but we need to dive into the endings of some of these characters. So, what do you think, Johnny, about the trio?
Yeah, it was an interesting trio. Obviously, Reese cares about Aslan. He knows. Reese still believes that Aslan can come back to the light, and there are moments where you think he can too. But then
I thought he was
no.
until we see yeah.
There's like the dark side is kind of like speaking to him, kind of like another person kind of thing. But I thought those three were really interesting. Obviously, those two have a long-standing relationship, whereas Ty is like the newcomer, and she sees Aslan as one of the monsters that she hunts, because that's what she does.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she used to be a Jedi who then left and became a monster hunter. And they kind of use her as like in the middle, they describe her like it takes all three of them using the Rod of Ages to overcome Malkion Ro's will through the other rod to have all the Nameless killing each other. Which in doing that it destroys both rods, so that kind of
thank goodness
nicely solves that.
yeah, for sure.
So
yeah, I like the trio. I think they worked well, surprisingly well.
Yeah, it was kind of unexpected. You know, you had I just felt like you had like the light, the dark, and then you had in the middle there, and you had these journeys. I just wish I knew, like, you know, they introduced Ty in a simple way, and then she just kind of floats through the universe through these stories. She gets a little comic run here and there, and you know, not much about her story till the end. And then of course she plays such a pivotal role in stopping the blight and stopping Markion and everything like that. So it's kind of interesting to me. And then whatever happens, you know, after that with her. So then of course we have the big one. We've got Markion, and we have Bell, we have Ember, and we have Buryaga. Now I will tell you this: I about threw my book out the door when I thought that Ember was coming to an end, and the way that it was happening.
Having a chapter from Ember's point of view.
That was amazing. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I think I read it twice because I loved it so much. And if you don't know anything about me, like, I love my dogs. Obviously, they're super important. We don't have kids, and Ember has been one of my favorite things through the books, and she's had these great moments. And I honestly was like, "Holy cow, he's going to do this!" Like, I really thought that Ember was ending.
Yeah.
And and then of course you get, you know, that all happens, and he cleverly gets Buryaga out of the way, and he gets Ember out of the way, and then it just comes down to, you know, Bell, and it comes down to Markion. I want you guys to talk about that. And I'm going to find a passage real quick that I absolutely loved. You guys chat about that real quick. How'd you feel about that?
Yeah, I was so excited to like realize that it was Ember's chapter, and then I was immediately terrified to realize that it was Ember's chapter.
So scared.
I think it was done very well. It reminded me a lot of my all-time favorite comic that has ever existed is the Hawkeye series by Matt Fraction, and there is a single issue in there that's told from the perspective of Lucky the pizza dog. And the whole issue is like only what a dog would see and understand. So there's like speech bubbles that are just like blurred out except for words that a dog would know, like treat or walk or whatever. And so it reminded me a lot of that. But Lucky doesn't throw herself off a cliff.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
Yeah, it's great. And you know, the fact, I think coming down to Bell versus Markion Ro makes sense because of everything, like how impactful losing Loden Greatstorm was in phase 1, and kind of how important,
and not just Bell against Markion,
that's introducing the Nameless at that moment as well, isn't it?
Saber.
Yeah, that was brutal. Fighting Loden's saber, like that's
yeah. And I thought it was done well, especially, you know, with the way he saw Loden, whether that's a force vision or just something in his brain kind of thing because of this place that he's in that's overwhelming with the Force. And that, because like in that moment he could have gone to the dark side because he just wants to beat Markion Rowe, but the way they did, Charles Soule did that and broke through that, and the effect that had on him, and it was kind of like, has Loden's spirit kind of taken over Bell a little bit?
Yeah, it was weird. Yeah,
acting through him, which then reminded me again of the Rise of Skywalker with Rey and all the Jedi. Like speaking to her, is she then, she's embodying all those Jedi at the same time as herself, kind of thing. So it kind of echoed that, I thought, which I really enjoyed.
I felt like it gave a little bit more oomph to Kylo and Han as well in the Rise of Skywalker, like the ability to the Force can bring you can bring it back to you when you need it and stuff like that. How about you, Marie? How did you feel about that whole battle scene? And so
it was very good and poetic justice, I think, for Bell, for Loden. I kind of assumed that that Loden was like a Force vision because of the planet, like where they were. Like it wasn't him necessarily, but it was the version of him that Bell knew that was reminding him what he already knew.
And it's kind of weird too, because I felt like the writing changed whenever Bell kind of like almost possessed, like you said, John. I felt like the writing in the book was kind of like I was kind of confused by like wait, what's happening? Like, is this like someone else is seeing this or whatever? But I had to read this part because this is just before it goes. He goes, "Tell me why the Jedi matter." Loden said, "All my lessons were that one lesson. Tell me you learned it." And then Bell closes his eyes, and when things are dark, there is no one else. The Jedi are there. We don't have to know you. We don't want anything from you. We will not put ourselves above you because of the things we can do. We always help. We always save what we can, even if it costs us everything. We love all beings equally without attachment or condition. And I was like, I probably reread that like, I don't even know how many times. I just thought that was so powerful. And I was listening to that part of it, the book too. And of course you got Mark, bringing these voices together, and you got the Star Wars music playing in the background. I was like, I was probably the most emotional was probably during that whole kick. And I was like, whoo, like kind of teary eyed, but I just felt like all the authors, I think Marie, you said it earlier, they all get to put their twist on the Force, and it gives us all, there's a way for all of us to see the Force. And and Charles is the way, he defines what the Jedi are right there to himself, because that's his version of what the Jedi should be. And it blows me away. And, just absolutely incredible part of that story. So, and then of course, that happens. He defeats Markion. He doesn't kill him because he is a Jedi after all. He does this out of body experience thing, and then they bring Burry up and Ember back up, and everyone's safe. And then the second team comes and gets everybody. I know we're kind of flying through some of this stuff, but we got to talk about Elzar and Avar, how it ends, right? Because then it's the last thing in the book, really. Right there with what happens to Markion. So how do we feel about those two being on this planet, and it's going to take, what did he say, centuries or decades? I can't remember for the balance to get restored.
I think
and so you
decades.
have them each being a conduit of the light and the dark. And like you said, they can't touch, but they can still be there and see each other at that one point. Is this also, I'll ask this too, do we ever see these two again? Because they're kind of, when I read this and they didn't, I thought they were going to have to sacrifice themselves. Like it was going to be we come together and, and we're going to stop it that way. And then instead there's this whole thing where they're on that planet kind of being like conduits for the Force. We've seen what the Force can do for longevity, and then you're an entire planet or, galaxy of it. How'd you guys feel about that? And do you think there's a possibility that comes back later? I mean, because, we've been speculating about things, with Rey and all this stuff coming out. And I just feel like the High Republic has put some things in place that could make some things make sense. If you read the High Republic, some people their minds will be blown if they hadn't, but what do you guys think about that?
I thought it was excellent. I mean, I think in my mind, I like to envision that, they only have to do this for a few decades and then they get to spend some time on the idyllic version of Planet X once everything's in balance for their last few years together. But I think it's also really cool because I feel like it reinforces the idea of like a dyad in the Force, which again, kind of proposed in the sequels and people were up in arms about. But I think it sort of sets that up as well, that like these two save the galaxy by being a dyad. I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Basically, it's like I say, it's they say it's going to take decades, for all the what is it, when it's out of balance. No, when a nameless dies, another egg gets burst or whatever. But it takes decades for those eggs to mature and hatch. So it's going to take the number of nameless have died to get it back to balance is going to take decades. So essentially, they're sacrificing. It's probably a bigger sacrifice than if you sacrifice your life in battle, because you're still alive, but they're sacrificing a potential life together, or whatever, to just hold it in balance, be in the Force the entire time, essentially, to hold everything in balance, so that the blight stops spreading, comes back, and then once, So when they say decades, I kind of in my head was imagining maybe like 30 years, something like that. They're probably both late 20s, early 30s.
They're in their mid 30s. Avar's, I think, 35 or 36.
By the time that's over, they're in their 60s. But
yeah,
like you say, I kind of imagined the same thing in my head. It was just like, oh, well, once it's back in balance, maybe they leave the Force and they just live out the rest of their days on that planet. Yeah.
You guys kind of got me thinking about that. Are there other? Do you think? Is this the only planet that's like that in the galaxy? I mean, do you think that there's like these diverse? Just using your imagination, it feels to me like this may just be a small microcosm of something like the Force does, because we've seen things in the Clone Wars and stuff like that. Like, do we want something like this in live action? You think that the mainstream fans could handle something this? I feel like it's more in depth than most of the book or most of the movies. Obviously, do you think that the mainstream fans could handle it?
Could they? No. But I think about like when the Clone Wars came out and the Mortis arc. I think
that's kind of what I was.
Closest we've gotten in any other media, and it was a very divisive arc within the fandom. I loved it. I thought it was really cool, and I think that, based on everything we know about the Force, that it makes sense that there are places like this in the galaxy, and there are some places that are stronger in the Force than others. The idea of a Virgins was just like, yeah, sure, makes sense. At least when I got there in the Acolyte. So I think this is probably a unique planet in like the strength of the Force and like its connection to everything, but it's certainly not the only Virgins. We've seen others in canon.
Yeah, I think that it stands to reason that there's going to be other places. I don't think there's ever going to be loads, but like you have, like you said, Mortis and Planet X, so forth. The World Between Worlds on whichever planet that was on. I can't remember where they got to that.
Access it from Lothal, but it spread to a bunch of places.
Yeah,
because they access it.
There are going to be these like kind of places in there, kind of like access points to the Force, a Force dimension or whatever. Could it work on screen? You'd have to have somebody incredibly good to write it. You'd have to have a Charles Soule or somebody.
Well, I've been screaming that. Like, we do have people good enough to write it. Though. Like, I feel like
I completely
these
agree.
authors need an opportunity to.
Yeah. Well, Charles Soule does. He's involved creatively in a lot of stuff in Star Wars now. Like, he's a creative consultant with a lot of Star Wars now.
Yeah.
So
I know George
and use more people like him and Kevin Scott and Claudia Gray. These are the kind of people that should be involved in. George and
Kevin are pretty tight, but they're on something. They're trying to work something in Star Wars together. Like, there's something coming, maybe. They obviously couldn't tell us anything like that, but what it was. But they said, "Yeah, we're working on stuff." But all right, so we have that ending, and of course, Aslan, he pieces out. Does that break canon?
I think it makes sense. I think he's gonna be the one to bring back the Sith, and I kind of thought that from like his introduction as the dark sider, in the manga, that it would make sense that like this is the beginning of the Sith rebirth.
Interesting. Yeah, because obviously we do see him bleed the crystal at the end.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and then he bounces. He's got a ship and he takes off. So I mean, it's just like, we're looking at about 150 years before Phantom Menace. Is that correct?
We're 100 years before the Acolyte, so we're still about 200 years before Phantom Menace.
You could be looking at the Masters, depending on what they want to do with canon, I guess. But does that break? We had such a meltdown over Chimere in the masses about, well, there are no Jedi for 1,000 years, or not Jedi, Sith. Sorry. Do you like the fact that he gets away, and do you think that it like kind of deal?
Yeah, I like the fact that he gets away. Throughout Phase 3, I've loved Aslan. Is just every time he's on the page, he's like electric.
Yeah.
There's something so
sometimes
crazy and weird and kind of not attractive, but like it makes you want to read it about him, whoever has written him in the various books and things. So I'm glad he got away.
When the Acolyte came out, that like people were complaining about, oh well, there couldn't be Sith because they said there hadn't been Sith. The people that told us there were no Sith were the Jedi, and the Jedi only said that because they had not seen a Sith, but that doesn't mean they didn't exist. It's just an unreliable narrator situation. But we know that Palpatine had a master, and that master probably also had a master. So, I mean, it's at least 100 years of Sith.
And people say that there can only ever be two, a master and an apprentice. We know that's nonsense because they do multiple apprentices and face moss against each other to get the most powerful one.
Yeah. So, it's just the Jedi's understanding of what's happening. It doesn't necessarily mean that's actually happening.
Yeah. I think they're kind of doing some things. I want to talk more about this when we talk about like the High Republic as a whole, but I really do feel like they're setting some things up to change Star Wars down the line a little bit. But so Markion, he gets put on trial, doesn't speak the entire time till the end. He gives him this big, lecture. I thought his his monologue against the Jedi on Planet X and with Bell were a little bit better, and then of course he's found guilty and he's sentenced. I think it's the worst thing that could have happened to him. No one there to listen to him. Right? He's sentenced to a rock.
Kira Staros says that, doesn't she? It's the worst thing that could happen to him because there's nobody for him to impress.
So were you happy with the fact that we know he dies because he does in this, like he just,
because if they just said they put him in this purpose prison that's just him and a few droids off in deep space, no one knows where it is, everyone would have just gone, oh well, he'll come back at some point, somebody will rescue him or he'll break out. It's like, nope, he died.
I appreciated that.
Were you surprised by it though? Like, were you guys surprised by the fact that they did kill him? I mean, they couldn't have the Jedi do it because it's not very Jedi-like.
I kind of thought he was going to die. So the fact, like, as part of the story, like somebody kills him or like, whatever. But no, the fact that he was just in prison for the rest of his days and then died.
That's kind of I thought it was good. I expected him to die on Planet X. I didn't expect him to come back and go on trial and all that. I figured that like one of the Nameless or something would have killed him, and that would have been also very poetic justice. But
kind of like the Game of Thrones character that gets eaten by his own dogs. I can't.
It would have worked. But no, I like that. I think his punishment was fitting. Is like the worst punishment that exists, and it is cruel and unusual and should never be implemented in real life. But I think it fits for him. And I like that they didn't leave it ambiguous and they tell us he died. He did not escape ever. He just died.
Yeah, it would be interesting. I wonder about the Everunny. This is a conversation for later, but I think they've established some really good characters for maybe the future of Star Wars. But was there anything missing from this book for you? A person, an event? We're going to kind of wrap it up after this, but like, I actually have one more question. is there a person or an event that you felt maybe didn't get the playtime that you thought they were going to get, or would have made the book better in your opinion? I mean,
There's a couple of things for me.
all
They're
right.
kind of like when we were talking about satisfying endings. These are kind of like almost like unsatisfying endings. One is Jira Staros. I really wanted her to get her comeuppance.
Yeah.
I wanted her dead. I wanted her in prison. I wanted something. I thought I hated her more than any other character in the Republic. But at the same time, I think maybe that's the point. She is one of these slippery politician people who get themselves out of trouble no matter what they've done, and is losing Avon in the sense that she'll never get to see her again.
Yeah.
Because Avon doesn't want to see her. A worse punishment, maybe. Probably for her. For me, no. I wanted her to suffer. And the other one is Venestra Rowe.
Yeah.
So much was made of the path that Mary Santeca gave her that was in her head. And it's kind of like they say, yeah, I understand their logic of she can't go be in the 9 because she needs to be in the backup 9 in case it goes wrong. So there's somebody that can go and rescue them that knows how to get there. But I think all it needed was a page or two of her, like the way that she saw the path, how that's communicated maybe to the team that's then flying there, something like that. So much was made of it, and then it's just oh yeah, that happened. Yeah,
That's fair.
Yeah, I thought she was the key. Like I thought this was going to be this big mystery that unfolds, and I also didn't feel like with Vernestra, because she's the one person I wrote down, because I mean, I heart Vernestra, but it doesn't really explain where she's at in the Acolyte. It doesn't really explain where she's at even in Wayseeker, because when you guys start that book, she's, like I said, I don't want to ruin anything,
older.
but she's older. She's not very happy with the Jedi still. It's this weird. You'll see, and it's good. Like I really enjoyed it. It was a simple read, but it was good, and I think it was a start of something. But I really expected something major to happen to Vernestra.
Yeah.
But I also don't think that if you talk to the authors of these books, they're probably very stoked that she was even in Acolyte. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like it wasn't a decision of theirs, so they weren't really prepared to, send her in that direction. It wasn't in the big. I mean, you think about the stuff they set up, the twins being able to communicate, like plopping them down. Like that's, I mean,
That's cool.
Yeah. Like I was like, well,
it's
that's
such a
crazy.
clever way of having them be able to communicate.
Yes,
Planet
and
X
things like
back
that.
to-
So, I wonder sometimes, creatives and stuff like that. But yeah, Vernestra was the one for me. I really thought more was going to happen with her and kind of start her on her path of being the grumpy gills that was in Acolyte. But whatever. And plus, I did feel like for all of phase 1 that they built her up to be like this, and I think it was as simple as she can see it. Like that's it. Like they seemed like a lot more involved. I guess it was kind of underwhelming for me. I'm, personally, just with the how much I like Vernestra. What about you, Marie? Is there a character or anyone that you don't feel like was in it enough, or you didn't like the ending for it, or?
I think in general, I enjoyed it. I was bummed that Cantum Sai was knocked out for a good portion of it, because I really enjoyed them as a character. But I know that there are a lot more in the comics, and I'm not caught up on the Adventures comics. So same thing with like Emmerich and Cyan, who they're comics that I'm not caught up on.
Yeah, that does.
I would have loved to see. We saw what Elzar was hallucinating. I would have loved to see what Avar was hallucinating.
Oh yeah,
as they were like walking on their little journey. But that's just me wanting more Avar screen time all the time.
So, John, you said you had a list. You got one more? Or?
No, it's just those two, Gira Staros and Venestra Rowe.
All right.
Yeah, really, those are the only two things. And just despite that, I do think Venestra Rowe was a major fumble. It doesn't hold back from how much I love the book overall.
Yeah.
Because there's, like we said, there's so much they had to try and, or Charles Soule had to try and
Cram
finish
in.
up and get done.
Yeah,
It's just
sure. No, it makes sense. I knew this book was either going to be 1,000-page Brandon Sanderson novel, or it was going to be, you know, there was going to be some stuff left out. Now that brings me to my last question for you guys. What from this era, from the end of Trials of the Jedi, this is the end of the High Republic as we know it, right? I don't consider Acolyte in this High Republic. I know it's a High Republic. I'm not saying like, oh, that's not my High Republic. I'm saying like, yes, like, so what story, because I'm almost positive there's more coming, but what story or person do you think, like, do you want next? Like, you get to tell Michael Sinclair, like, hey, this is a story I have to have, and this is the author I want to write it. Where are we going?
I hadn't even thought about authors, but
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
the most obvious one, the one that everyone will want, is a Young Firebrands novel, which
Yes,
you know, Stellan,
definitely.
Avar, Elzar. Then when they're young, do it.
I would adore that. And talking about authors, I would love Tessa Gratton to get a shot at that one.
Oh, yeah.
Because I love Tessa's writing. They're really great.
Yeah, they do a good job. Her book, that book is coming out end of this month, I believe. Jackie and Yord.
Yeah, soon.
It'll be interesting. That's optimistic about it because you know we know how things end, so it's like, but yeah. Anything else with any other characters or
Reith and Aslan?
Yes,
Reith searching for Aslan. What's Aslan getting up to? That's the one I want most. Reith is my favorite character in High Republic, I think. So yeah, that one's high up there for me. Author-wise, for that one, I don't know. Maybe George Mann.
Yeah, George would be really good. Claudia would be really good.
They all would be though, right? I mean, it's like you can't lose. You just throw a name, throw a dart at a board, and whoever it lands on. Yeah, I kind of want to like the Jedi tracking down Aslan, and I'd love Lydia to write it because you don't know who's going to live. if she's at the helm, and she gives me full credit or gives us that. But honestly, the more I've been around Yaddle and some of the things that I've had to, I want a Yaddle. I want some more Yaddle after Phase 2 and some of the little snippets that she has in these books. She's also, she's in Wayseeker for like 5 seconds. I've gotten more and more attached to her. I don't know if it's because we know how things end for her because of Tales of the Jedi, but I would love some more Yaddle adventures, after the Living Force and things like that. But all right, so guys, I want to thank you both for joining. I love talking Star Wars with you guys. I really love talking the High Republic with you guys, and I want you both to come back, and we're going to deep dive the High Republic. We're going to try to figure this out because I don't think it's a 1 hour conversation. Like a two-parter possibly. But again, I want to thank you both for joining me today, taking time out of your day to talk about the High Republic. And you guys tell everybody where they can find you on social media so they can give you a follow, because I know people are going to want to see that armor as soon as it's done, Marie.
Yeah, it's probably going to be a while. But yeah, you can find me So Much Life on Instagram and kind of TikTok. I haven't really been active on TikTok in a while, but there I am, and I'll post updates hopefully when I get my armor printed, and then I get to experiment. I'm not an armor person. I'm a soft sewing fabric person. So this will be a new adventure for me.
I can't wait though. Johnny, what about you?
At Starbird Files on Instagram is basically where you can find me. There's a few links on there to blogs and things that I've done.
Lots of stuff on there. He's being modest, folks. There's lots and lots of stuff on there. If you miss stories or things like that, you can hop on there and you can get caught up pretty quickly with what's happening in the books and which books to read, and possibly skip over if you need to. I think all of us are like, read it all if you can. But again, thank you guys so much. I look forward to our final chat on the High Republic here in a few weeks. Maybe I'll reach out to you guys. But for this one, we have spoken. So we'll see you guys next time.
Only now, at the end, do you understand? Close your eyes.